Kia ora and welcome to the Itinerary. Inclusive tourism is a term you may not have heard of. It's about reducing uncertainty around what to expect from a destination or service. It's about creating an environment where all people feel welcome and included. And while COVID-19 has temporarily brought our industry to a standstill, now might be just that time for our operators to start thinking of how they can be more inclusive. That is something my guest, my very special guest, has been making headway in for the past few years. Jezza Williams is the founder and director of Making Trax, a not-for-profit that aims to make adventure tourism more accessible. Let's check out his story.
My life is a lot different than the average person, I could say.
I'm in a wheelchair. I'm a C5 tetraplegic. I'm in this situation by accident, not choice. Prior to my injury, I was an adventure guide, an international river guide, canyon guide, climbing guide, ski patrol. All in all, just a really outdoory sort of individual with many years experience traveling internationally, guiding all over the world.
Straight after my accident, I looked into the outdoor industry in New Zealand.
I was scared. I thought I wouldn't be able to travel. I thought that I wouldn't be able to experience the outdoors.
I was really blown away at the lack of infrastructure and network for people that would be in wheelchairs or with any different mobility issues, really. So I came back to New Zealand after about 11 months in rehab. And I was lucky enough to have lots of friends, like my rafting boys and skydiving boys and girls and all my paragliding mates down in Queenstown. And I slowly started getting things opened pretty much for myself to start with. I think that it was important for myself to get back on the horse and get amongst what I could. Somebody with an ability like myself can get out there and get amongst it, whether it's traveling, whether it's camping, whether it's throwing myself down whitewater rapid or paragliding or playing and just carrying on, just living the way that I've always lived. The whole point of what the initiative of Making Trax is, it's bringing everybody into the limelight and providing an infrastructure, a directory and opportunities for the whole of inclusive tourism, adventure travel, whether it's in New Zealand, whether it's overseas. Bringing the whole network together, I think, is really important because it's important to open the industry. Inclusive tourism is what I call it.
What he's doing for adventure tourism and inclusive tourism in our country and the world is so amazing. And what he's doing is helping us to feel more comfortable to get other people with disabilities out with us. So he's an amazing role model, actually, for people in wheelchairs, but also for us as well.
I'm quite disabled, if you like, and that means that if I can do it, then anybody can do it. If it's not possible, I'll make it possible. And if somebody says no, then I will defy what they think and I'll make sure that they go, oh, okay. This is possible, and that's why Making Trax can change a whole industry.
Kia ora, Jezza. What an inspirational story. Thank you for being with us. We are so lucky to have people like you out here in our industry making a difference. Tell me, do many of New Zealand's tourism operators offer accessible options? And you tell me a little bit more about yourself too.
Kia ora, Megan. It's great to be aboard this beautiful itinerary show, and it's fantastic that everybody's actually aware of what inclusive tourism is. But however, I'm going to fill you in a little bit more. Yes. So a lot of people you've been talking about is accessible tourism and inclusive tourism. And before we really start, we really should put things into perspective. So What Making Trax does, that's what my company has been doing over the last 8 years or so, has been introducing inclusive tourism into the New Zealand tourism industry. Now, this is not to be confused with accessible tourism. So inclusive tourism is about the actual activity. It does not mean toilets, ramps, infrastructure, all this carry on, which is fantastic, and it'd be amazing if everybody had this, but it's not really needed. So inclusive tourism, what we're going to be talking about today, is more about everybody being on the same page, whether that's through information, whether that's through education. It's more about cooperation, and only if needed, then we will go down the pathway of looking for adaptations, which we'll talk about further on down the strap. But yeah, New Zealand, we're really looking at inclusive tourism at the moment, and it's a perfect time to get amongst it, because right here, right now, we've got all these amazing activities that anybody, and when I say anybody, I mean anybody can get out there and enjoy. So yeah, it's a growing, and it's still growing, and it's got a long way to go. But there's definitely a lot of action out there that anybody can really get their reward from.
Awesome. I love how you put that. Anybody. And just in this short little snippet, you've already educated me about the difference between inclusive and accessible tourism. So thank you so much for that, Jezza. Tell me, when we talk about accessible tourism, is there a big market for accessible tourism?
Well, accessible tourism is available within New Zealand. When we talk about accessible tourism, we're talking more about the accommodation. We're talking about getting to venues. We're talking about accessible vehicles. We're talking about accessible camper vans. We're talking about all these different accessible public transport between cities, etc., etc. Now, sadly, New Zealand is very behind the times with accessible tourism. However, we're an adventure-based country, and that's why inclusive tourism works incredibly well for what we have here. People don't come all the way to New Zealand, or Kiwis don't travel all around New Zealand to use the bathroom. We travel around for adventure, and that's where Making Trax assists. We assist companies to open up their product so any client can walk in and enjoy their activity. To do this, however, they do need to be provided with the correct information, and the client needs to understand what exactly the activity is. So if they understand the activity, then it's really, really, really simple for the client to make their decision whether or not that they can go and do this activity or not. So the thing with inclusive tourism, it's right now. Yes. It's also very cost effective. And it includes everybody. Accessible tourism is amazing, and this comes with time. It means building infrastructure. It means spending a lot of money. It means all these things, which would be amazing. But things like rafting, paragliding, skydiving, fishing, jet boating, so many more activities, they're not really accessible. But with the right company, understanding their client, and the help of Making Trax, what we can do is we can provide the information and training, and then it's easy. You know, I'm a C5 tetraplegic. Most of the activities that I have gone through and organized over the last few years myself, I can pretty much do with my beautiful body, which is a C5.
Can you tell us some of the successes you've had helping businesses become more accessible?
Yeah, well, over the years, we have really opened up some pretty amazing activities that have never really been that possible. Like when I had my injury in 2010, I really looked into the outdoor industry, and I was quite blown away at the lack of infrastructure, or the lack of the activities that I myself could do. So since that time, we've done some pretty awesome ones. Like we've brought in harnesses and we've manufactured harnesses for rafting. We've opened skydiving. So we've made harnesses that lift the legs up to make it incredibly safe and easy. We've made a ski chair for the glacier up in Franz Josef. So anybody that wants to go up onto the glacier can now get out of their helicopter and actually experience the glacier itself. We've opened an incredible amount of sea kayaking companies. And just recently, we've excitedly opened up pack rafting with Pack Rafting Queenstown, which will be one of the things that is going to be coming out over this next summer. So, yeah, there is, once we open up one thing, if we open up one skydiving company in New Zealand, we can do all the skydiving companies. If we open up one sea kayaking company, we can do all the sea kayaking companies, et cetera, et cetera. And that follows through with most of the activities. But it also, when we talk about inclusive tourism, it's got a lot to do with the client, because what we'll explain a little bit is about how we vet in the industry as well. Like, for example, me personally, I don't want to go down a glacial fed class 5 river. However, I love skydiving. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, he can't go skydiving. He's too heavy. And I don't really want to go down that glacial fed Rangitata River, but Aaron Farthingham from Wheels from Nitro Circus, he's gone down there a number of times. So the inclusive tourism, not only do we look at the individual and work around the individual's abilities, we also can assist by opening up using special, very cost-effective, safe and efficient systems that sit in place and make things very achievable is more what I'd say, yeah.
Now, Jezza, can you give us some examples of opportunities you think businesses could and should explore?
Well, the thing is, and a lot of people don't really understand the market, what we're talking about. And I can fill you in with that in a little bit if you like. But it's really, really simple. Like with myself, I've had over 25 years in the adventure-based industry. Previous to my injury, I was a international river guide and also ski patrol and canyon guide and sailing guide. And, I've got a huge understanding of the possibilities and what is possible. And when I look at a company, I sort of stick with the Kiwi mindset of cost-effective practicalness, and we work with the company. So I sort of can help any company that is in New Zealand become an inclusive company, because what we're doing is we're working with you to make your company the best of its ability to the client that walks in the door. And as we know in this day and age, every ability is different, whether it's a very obvious disability like myself, or whether it's somebody coming from a foreign country that's never been out of a city, can't speak our language, and is unable to swim. There is also understanding your client, and this is what inclusive tourism is about. It's about understanding your client and understanding the possibilities. Sometimes that's not so easy, because to understand your client and to understand the possibilities, you need an in-between person that understands it all. And luckily for me, I fell into this industry by accident, not by choice. And I'm here to assist the industry with opening as many products as they possibly can think of.
What would be your hope for the future of accessible and inclusive tourism, Jezza?
Well, I'd actually like to see every single company in New Zealand that runs an activity to firstly look at Making Trax, contact Jezza at makingtrax.co.nz. But just work with me. I'm a down-to-earth, very practical thinking human being. And it's not about the disabled sector. It's not about making things available to people, It's about treating people as people. It's about treating people as humans. And it's about opening up your awareness to what is possible. And honestly, it blows my mind as a tetraplegic what my body can do and what's possible as well. So it's easy for me to assist any company, really. And it would be amazing to see things in New Zealand like accessible camper vans in the camper van capital of the world. None here at the moment, sadly enough. Also, it would be awesome to have, intercity bus systems that have accessibility as well. The more we have in New Zealand and the more activities we have in certain areas, what this does is it actually provides more events or more activities for an individual to go to a destination. So we're creating a destination. We're creating a destination in Queenstown. We're creating a destination in France. We're creating a destination in Abel Tasman. We're creating a destination in Nelson. You understand what I mean? The more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like what we used to do in the industry when we were training up 25, 30 years ago, when we were talking about bums on seats. We're talking about making New Zealand an adventure capital of the world. What we haven't done is we haven't looked at making New Zealand the inclusive capital of the world, which is possible, but will take a little bit more cooperation from a lot of other companies as well. So it's about us all working together to provide an activity.
And for our operators out there, if you would like to consult with Jezza about making your business more inclusive, more accessible, please reach out to him via his website, makingtrax.co.nz. Next on the panel is Martin King to discuss LGBT tourism. But first, let's hear from Jason Biggs as he talks us through the need to give good feedback in our workplace.
The relationship between a manager and their employee helps a business grow. Your job is only as good as your boss, and there's a direct link between happy workers and happy customers. To support a good relationship, there are 5 key coaching conversations that we need to have at work. The second conversation is giving good feedback. Ken Blanchard, the author of The 1 Minute Manager, says we're in the business of catching up people doing things right. The number one reason why people leave their jobs is they do not feel appreciated. A Harvard Business Review study found that to maintain a healthy working relationship, the ideal ratio of good to constructive feedback is 5-1. The best feedback is individualized, specific not general, immediate not delayed, focused on behaviors not evaluations, is communicated as more or less not either or, is asked for not pushed upon. So what does this conversation look like? When giving feedback, there are 3 questions you can ask. Firstly, what's working? This encourages us to do more of, creates a positive environment for the brain and a sense of safety to be open to more information. Secondly, where are we getting stuck? Stuck is not right or wrong, good or bad, it's just stuck. And then thirdly, what can we do differently? This starts to help others solve problems as 2 heads are better than 1, and creation creates ownership.
And to continue our discussion on inclusive tourism today, I'm now joined by Martin King, the director of Winter Pride, which is held annually in Queenstown, and in fact has just wrapped up this weekend. Kia ora, Martin, welcome. You must be tired. How did it all go?
Kia ora, Megan. Oh, tired, I think, is an understatement for sure. I think absolutely exhausted, but also feel really exhilarated by what we were able to deliver, really, in such extremely challenging circumstances.
Oh, I can just imagine, but the reports have been amazing. I watched all the media activity, friends on Facebook, everywhere were raving about it and really stirring the fact that we weren't there, which we're all a little bit envious about. But Tell me, give us a little bit of backstory around how it all came to be. Was it something that you felt New Zealand needed? And just tell us about your foundation of this fantastic event.
Sure. So this was my 3rd year at running Winter Pride. And the backstory is that Winter Pride's existed for well over a decade in Queenstown. And similar festivals exist all over the world, in the US and Canada and in Europe. However, they typically named gay ski weeks. And in Queenstown, Winter Pride, before we took it over, my husband and myself, was called Gay Ski Week. So the festival had kind of been around a long time, had grown and grown and grown and grown. But when we took it over, we felt that we needed to broaden the reach in terms of the market. and broaden the brand appeal beyond skiing. So the change from Gay Ski Week to Pride certainly enabled that. And I mean, we've seen more than 100% growth in the festival over that same period. And we've also seen continued growth and support from local businesses, sponsors, and more people getting involved and really feeling a sense of ownership of Pride in Queenstown as now the largest Pride festival in the South Island, as well as now one of the largest festivals of its type in New Zealand. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a background.
Oh, neat. Congratulations. It all sounds fantastic. Tell us, how does an event like this benefit the local community?
Yeah, it's hugely important for the local community, not only during these difficult times, but annually. 95% of the people who attend the festival are from outside the district in Queenstown. So it's a destination festival, a tourism festival, if you like. And last year, our data showed that we had 45% of our guests from Australia, 45% from the rest of New Zealand, but that's from Kaitaia to Invercargill and everywhere in between. And then 10% of our guests from broader afield than Australia and New Zealand. So certainly as a international festival, and now based on what we know, we're one of the largest Winter Pride festivals anywhere in the world. And that's pretty amazing space to be. But remember, this year, it's a bit different. You know, COVID hit. We had a domestic-only festival. So we can talk a little bit more about that and the complexity and what that meant for the local economy as well.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you in those new and changed stats and data, and now wrapping it up into a more domestic market. So would you say that New Zealand is an LGBT tourism destination?
Yes and no. So the yes part is that, you know, New Zealand is world renowned for being one of the safest countries in the world. You know, we were one of the first countries to have marriage equality. We've got really progressive laws when it comes to our human rights legislation, and people know that. But New Zealand doesn't market itself as an LGBT destination. It doesn't leverage those tools. We don't tell the world about Winter Pride. We don't tell the world about events like the Big Gay Out, for example, or the Wellington International Pride Parade. What I see is a huge opportunity for tourism in New Zealand. Is assumed that it just exists anyway. The other factor is that there's no significant funding for LGBT tourism or LGBT events in New Zealand. And so therefore, their viability financially is very, very tenuous. And so I really think there's a call to action from Tourism New Zealand and the government around seriously looking at what is 10% of our population, and based on numbers that I've looked at, suggests up to 15% of all global tourism spend. We're not doing ourselves justice to benefit from that.
Oh, you're really laying out some challenges there, and I think they're very timely and it should be happening. So thank you for being brave and bold enough to let us know that these messages, these events need more promotion, more publicity. With that in mind, what can we do to improve?
Well, look, acknowledging the fact that there's not a strategy at the moment has to be a start. If you don't have a strategy around how to create an LGBT tourism plan or investment, you know, we're not going to get anywhere. You know, small token initiatives are not sustainable. So we need that acknowledgement. I launched a petition during the first lockdown, which went to the Minister of Tourism and to Tourism New Zealand, and they have acknowledged that there is now policy work that is happening, and that's great. Then, in addition to that, from that strategy, we really need to engage LGBT tourism operators and tourism operators who are working in this space to really understand what are the things that are going to support them to create safe, inclusive and welcoming tourism operators. So be it hotels, adventure activities, events, and then supporting them to do that. And then obviously to do that, we need funding. There needs to be an envelope of funding from Tourism New Zealand, the Ministry of Tourism, or other organisations that is channeled towards the LGBT tourism sector, just like it does for Māori or Pacifica, or targeting Chinese tourists is a good example, or backpackers or hikers. It's a segment. It's an important segment, and we need to get the ball rolling sooner rather than later in a diversified tourism economy that we need to build faster now, more than ever.
Great. We talk about that diversifying. We're talking about economy. We're talking about strategy. Let's talk opportunities. What opportunities are out there for our LGBT tourism?
So my view is that LGBT people want to come together. They want to come together for events like Winter Pride. I think Winter Pride, is a great case study of what is possible. It's driving tourists to a destination for a purpose. That's very clear. It's about celebrating our differences, celebrating love, celebrating inclusion, and it's having a range of events and a range of activities that people can do with like-minded people or people of the same gender or sexual orientation. And so festivals, we can do. Events like Big Gay Out, we can do. They need more funding. Theatre, drag shows, cabaret, anything that's going to bring LGBT people together to do something that celebrates and keeps us safe and included is what we should be doing. I mean, a bungee jump's good and well, but a bungee jump is not going to bring people from LGBT communities together, from all corners of the country or all corners of the world. Weddings, same-sex weddings and unions. We've been working on that in Queenstown to promote Queenstown as the LGBT weddings capital of New Zealand, and we've got a dedicated LGBT weddings community down there. So that's a great, very niche market, but a hugely important one economically and socially. So hopefully that gives a bit of a taste, but I'm sure there's a lot more out there, and we need to get those ideas and start working on them.
And now we will wrap things up with Kate Godfrey of Madison Recruitment, who has advice for job seekers on how to manage their social media accounts while looking for new roles.
So with the world becoming more and more digital, your online footprint is readily available. Make sure it reflects you in a positive light. Your email address will be the first thing that a hiring manager sees when you apply for a role, so ensure that it portrays you as a professional. You'd be surprised about how much a potential employer can see online, whether it's a quick Google search, or they might choose to have a look at your LinkedIn or your Facebook profile. So Instagram and Facebook should be used for personal purposes. Make sure that your privacy settings are suitable. And if you are looking for work and you don't already have one, now's a good time to set up your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is a professional networking tool. Think about it like Facebook for work. It allows you to showcase your skills, your expertise, and your knowledge to potential employers. Upload a professional photo, so head and shoulders, and in the photo, wear what you would be wearing if you were going to work. You can also update your status to show that you are open to work. When you start to add your connections, it's a good idea to send a personal note to people that you don't necessarily already know. For example, if you'd like to add me, send me a message saying that you saw me on the Itinerary. Or if they're a VIP like Bill Gates, you can choose to follow that person rather than add them as a two-way connection. You can also use LinkedIn to research companies, recruiters, interviewers, and hiring managers. This is helpful before you're submitting an application or going to an interview. Having a profile also allows you to see what companies are doing, and you can follow target companies. You can see what they post, what they're working on, and any jobs that they've got advertised. For some of you, LinkedIn might not have immediate rewards, but if you consider where you want to be in 5 or 10 years, you can start building those connections now. It's all about your personal brand.
And join us next week when we will be discussing Māori tourism. I look forward to chatting with you all again, same time, same place. Haere rā.